The Atlanta Braves blow a lead and drop the season opener to the Padres 7-4. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on into a special live post-game edition of Braves Today. This is Thursday, March 27th. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby. This was not expected. I was not planning on doing this, but our friends at Locked On haven't gotten all the technical stuff worked out yet. So let's talk about Atlanta's 7-4 loss to the San Diego Padres. A lot of thoughts. There is some good here, believe it or not. There's some bad. There's some strategic decisions that we have to ask questions about. And I think the tough thing for me here, what makes this really hard, is the fact that this game ended up kind of the way that we thought it was going to, right? I talked on the preview on Thursday morning all about how you had a plan to attack Michael King and how there were things that you could do to get to Michael King and not let him have the same type of game that he had against you in the postseason. And I mean, this is not a toot my own horn kind of thing. This is they did those things. Austin Riley, Ozzie Albies, guys we talked about that were both non-factors in that postseason game. One of them because he was injured in Riley. One of them because he was only able to hit righty in Albies. They had a legitimate impact in this game. Atlanta is tied 3-3 after the third. They take a 4-3 lead in the fourth inning. They get Michael King out of the game early. Michael King goes 2 2/3 innings, 3 runs on 4 hits, 4 walks to 3 strikeouts. And some of this is his fault, right? Like he was just wilder than he was the last time you saw him. But a lot of this was Atlanta doing this. His ERA is 10.13 for this outing. But it goes to the bullpen, and that's where you lose it. And I think the conversation here needs to be, the proper conversation needs to be on the choices of relievers that got you to the point that you're there. So Dylan Lee comes out for the 6th inning after Chris Sale. And Snit talked in the post game. This is like the one time where I'm kind of glad we didn't go live immediately after the game. I had a little bit of time here to sit and listen to the post game and think about this. Snit said that longer first inning for Sale is what kept him from going back out for the 6th. So Dylan Lee comes in for the 6th inning, picks up a hold, scoreless inning, 9 pitches, gets 3 outs. Okay, you're fine. For the 7th, the Braves go with Hector Neris. And the fundamental flaw in this thought process, I think, is twofold. One, you have not seen Hector Neris in a high leverage situation at all. And 2, you could have gone back to Dylan Lee. I understand the thought process of it's early in the year. We don't want to stack too much up on guys this early. But Dylan Lee threw 9 pitches. He had plenty of outings where he went multiple innings last year. So you absolutely could have gone to Dylan Lee for a 2nd inning. And if you are going to go to someone, Hector Neris, in retrospect, it's easy to say was not the guy. But I think you have other pitchers in the pen that you have seen more while they are in Atlanta. You have actually seen them throw both in previous seasons in Atlanta and this year. Again, Hector Neris got 3 innings in spring and a little bit of stuff there in camp, throwing to minor leaguers or live BPs or whatever. So for the Braves to decide not to go with a Deisabel Hernandez, not to go with a Pierce Johnson, I understand it's a clean inning. The thought process here is It's not like we want to save Pierce Johnson, I guess, for the 8th and Raisel Iglesias for the 9th. But Hector Neris, in retrospect, wasn't the right decision. Now, here's the hard part about this. The actual pitch for the home run from Hector Neris, I will go to my grave saying this was not a bad pitch. It's a full count. This is I have it here, 93.5 mile an hour fastball up and away on the outside corner to a righty. Like when you go and you pull up the pitch plot of where this pitch was, that's a dot. Like in retrospect, that's not a bad pitch. And Gavin Sheets, who in his career has not been a good hitter, gets a good swing on it and absolutely does well. Like does exactly what you need to do with that, right? But Dylan Lee, like this is something where I probably wouldn't have used Dylan Lee in the 6th. I would have liked to have held Dylan Lee for the 7th. I understand the whole you wanted him because you were thinking about who was up. You were thinking about handedness and all of that. But I also wouldn't have gone to Hector Neris there. And it's important to kind of remember Atlanta still could have won this game. It's not necessarily just because Hector Neris gave up a home run, a single, and was pulled, and then they got a couple other things here. Atlanta had opportunities to score in this game after Michael King left, and they didn't do it. And I think that's part of your issue here as well, is Atlanta's bats went cold, right? Think about how the beginning of this game went, okay? First inning, Jurickson Profar single to lead off the game. You get the run on the Ozzie Albies double play that's not a double play. Great. Michael Harris grounds out, innings over. You come back out in the 2nd after a Drake Baldwin strikeout, which we're going to get to Drake Baldwin because holy cow, we're going to get to Drake Baldwin. Orlando Arcia base hit. Okay, we'll take that. Jared Kelenic ground out, Jurickson Profar strikeout, inning over. After the 3rd inning, right, you get the home run, you get single, you get some other stuff in the 3rd inning. And then in the 4th inning, the Austin Riley home run, followed by 2 singles. You can't cash in runners on the corners. Ozzie always flies out. From that point on, here is how every single inning went. 5th inning, strikeout, fly out, strikeout. 6th inning, fly out, strikeout, pop out. 7th inning, leadoff walk, fly out, ground out. Matt Olson never advances past first base. Okay. He's thrown out at second base for the 2nd out of the inning. 8th inning, line out, fly out, strikeout. In the 9th, you get Austin Riley reaches by a throwing error. Matt Olson walks. You don't have a hit in the last 5 innings. So at a certain point here, you're in a situation where, yes, the bullpen blew it. And what sucks is we all thought that was what was going to happen, right? If you went into this game thinking that the bullpen was a problem, nothing that happened in this game said that you were wrong. Now, 2 things can be true at once. The bullpen blew it today. They weren't alone in the loss, but in the long run, they could still be fine. Obviously, this was not a great loss. But the offense has to do more. And there is a comment in here. I did see a comment about somebody asking about Grant Holmes coming in. So Snit addressed that in the post game. Grant Holmes, in essence, was available to pitch an inning in lieu of throwing a bullpen, right? Something like this, typically what'll happen, guys will wait to throw their pens until after the game, right? This game was an earlier game. It's not going to be a super late night. They can wait and throw their bullpens after the game. And so in lieu of having Grant Holmes throw a bullpen after the game, They just let him warm up and throw what ended up being a live bullpen where he got 2 strikeouts there in the final inning that Atlanta played. So the bullpen, still an issue. It is very early. We need to remember that it is very early. This is one game. And something that I said earlier in the week, maybe it was late last week, was that this bullpen is going to be a revolving door, right? Now, the guy that I thought was going to be out of here it's not. Jose Suarez is the one that I thought was going to blow something for you. And Jose Suarez is the one who did not pitch today. Daisma Hernandez did not pitch. Pierce Johnson did not pitch. They're all available for tomorrow. So is Raisel Iglesias. But if this happens 1 or 2 more times, it's very easy for Atlanta to move on from Hector Neris. You call up Buck Farmer. You've got other options. And we're going to see some of that, right? We're going to see these guys cycle through. In just a second, I want to get to some of your questions that are in the chat here, some of your comments, as well as I want to talk about Drake Baldwin. I want to talk about Jurickson Profar and how well they did. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to the special live post-game episode of Braves Today. After the Braves were beaten 7-4 by the San Diego Padres. And I want to get to real quick while you guys are, I can see you guys are leaving some of the comments here with some questions and things like that. I do real quick want to get to Drake Baldwin and Jurickson Profar. I think both of these guys had very good debuts, and it's easy to look at the stat lines and say, hey, Jurickson Profar went 1 for 5. It's easy to look at the stat line and say, hey, Drake Baldwin went 0 for 3. This wasn't that good. But the approaches for these guys were really, really good. And I apologize for not having the updated numbers right now. I'll have this on tomorrow's show, on tomorrow's show. But I was going and tracking live on social media as we were doing all of this, looking at how many pitches those two were seeing and were taking. Through the first 2 at-bats, Drake Baldwin had seen 13 pitches, drew a walk. Jurickson Profar had seen 11 pitches and had a single. Through their first 3 at-bats, Drake Baldwin was at 20 pitches. Jurickson Profar was at 33. And this is absolutely something that we have seen Braves teams be bad about, is not taking pitches, swinging too early in the at-bat, and just letting the starter cruise for too long. It's like when I play MLB The Show and every at-bat's resolved within the second or third pitch because I'm swinging all the time, and this dude gets through 5 innings at 40 pitches. It's what it feels like with this team sometimes. Drake Baldwin, Jurickson Profar, despite combining for 1 hit and 1 walk, they absolutely are part of the reason that Michael King left the game early, because they were able to go in there and stack up pitches seen in every single at bat. There is a comment in the chat I want to get to real quick because I've thought about this. I listened to Snit talk about this in the post game. The Padres stole a lot of bases. Try to get the exact number here. But the Padres were very, very active with the stolen bases in this game. Tatis had 2. Machado had 2. This is the first time I think I saw in his career he's had 2 doubles and 2 stolen bases in the same game. Xander Bogaerts had 1 as well. And some of this was with a lefty. Chris Sale was in the game. Aaron Bummer was in the game when a lot of these stolen bases happened. But again, 2 things can be true at once. Drake Baldwin's arm is not a strength of his game. It's fine, right? It can do what needs to be done. He can get the ball there in time to make the play. But San Diego had a specific game plan to run early and often on Atlanta, and they were getting just absolutely absurd jumps. And I don't have the specific stats on it because a lot of that's not available yet from StatCast and things like that. But Snit mentioned in the game or in the post game, that's more on the pitching staff than it is on Drake Baldwin. A catcher can only do so much when Tatis is getting a massive jump off of second before the ball's out of the pitcher's hand, right? Atlanta's pitchers as a unit, as a staff, did not do a good enough job, with I think one exception. They threw over twice at Jason Hayward. But other than that, Atlanta's pitchers did not do a good enough job of holding these runners to more reasonable leads where Drake Baldwin had a chance to get to throw some guys out. Okay. So did he manage to make any of those plays? He did not. Is that entirely on him? No. Matter of fact, just from kind of when I was watching and seeing some of the leads and some of the jumps these guys got, I would say that was probably 70-30 pitcher over catcher, right? Can Drake Baldwin maybe do some back pick stuff and things like that to try to help that not happen? Yeah, of course. But a lot of that was on the pitchers, not necessarily Drake Baldwin. Did he have a perfect game? No. I thought he called a pretty decent game. Chris Sale had a comment after the game that he thought Drake Baldwin called a pretty good game. And so that's ultimately, like, that is something you have to clean up. Yes, you have to clean this up. More of that is on the pitching staff and those meetings that the pitchers and catchers have together than it is going to Drake Baldwin and saying this is an issue that you have, right? This is a whole staff issue here. Braves Thrills, real quick, has an interesting comment. Haven't heard a lot of people criticizing Tatis for that botch single. In case you missed this, Tatis pulled what I'm going to affectionately call a Ronald, where he went to pimp what he thought was a home run that was not a home run. He ended up with a single, and I'm trying to remember, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, I don't remember if he scored or not in that inning. I want to say one of his stolen bases came in that inning, but this was absolute. That was off of Neris. He needed to run that out of the box. He obviously did not, was held to a single. Very entertaining there. And another question here in the chat real quick. It was off of Chris Sale. Thank you for that. I'm trying to go through the game stats and find that real quick, but that was off of Chris Sale. Now that you mentioned that, 364-foot single, bottom of the fifth inning. That was leadoff. That's right. That was leadoff. He ended up, he advanced to second, stole third, and then Sale got both Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts to strike out to strand him at third. That's right. And the Xander Bogaerts strikeout was the final batter faced by Chris Sale. The big takeaways here. One, Chris Sale, not his best game. He absolutely battled, right? Chris Sale left that game. He allowed 7 runners in 5 innings. 3 runs came in. But when Chris Sale left this game, you were leading. And that is what we are asking for your starting pitcher to do very early in the season. If you remember last year, Chris Sale was a little bit shakier at the beginning of the season and very quickly settled in. You give me 5 innings, 3 runs or less, it's not on you when we lose. Again, it's on the bullpen. There was a question in the chat of how many games are we going to lose while we have this trial and error with the pen. The hope here, and we have no confirmed info. Kind of a tough question to answer here, Pat. But the hope is that they are quicker to pull the plug. My thought process here would be you have enough options in Gwinnett where you can pull the plug quickly if somebody is not working out, right? If Hector Neris has one more bad outing, you can pull the plug after 2. You don't have to wait a month to see what happens. If you finally get Suarez in there and Suarez struggles, you can pull him after 2 or 3 outings and you can go ahead and DFA him and you can get somebody else in there. So my hope is that it's not very many, but there is another part of this as well that I want to point out. There's been, in case you haven't realized, people who watch the show every day, I am a baseball nerd. I read about baseball all the time. I watch baseball all the time. I was reading something literally at lunchtime today that was talking about every additional inning after the 5th inning that your starter goes, the ERA of the relievers that follow him that day and the day after drop for every inning he can cover after the 5th. And it's because, obviously, less exposure to the bullpen, you're having to throw less guys, but usually you're also winning, and you can go in there and you can throw better relievers. They're covering less innings. As the season progresses, if these pitchers, it's beginning of the year, if these pitchers can go deeper into games, that will help mitigate a little bit of your bullpen instability, right? If Sale goes 7 today, Hector Neris probably is never in the game, right? You throw Johnson and Lee, depending on when the lefties are coming up, and then you go to Iglesias in the 9th. So you have a little bit of that. You have a little bit of knowing if guys can go deep, you can do that. But like we said earlier in the show, the big inexcusable problem in this game was the choice to send out Hector Neris in that inning, period. Like, that was your problem. And again, you could have gone with Dylan Lee a second inning. I understand the flip side of that. It's early in the year. There's no need to stack up multiples when you have everybody, including apparently Grant Holmes, available for an inning. And you could have gone to a Daisabel Hernandez to someone else, right? The end of the day, I still don't think the bullpen is going to make or break this season. They lost the Braves this game. The Braves offense was not blameless in that. Again, they did not have a hit after the 4th inning. They did really well against Michael King, and it's the guys, toot my own horn, it's the guys we talked about in the preview on Thursday morning. We talked about Austin Riley and Ozzie Albies, and those were the guys that did it. But after he left the game, after like the 4th inning or so, you didn't get any hits. So, yes, your bullpen blew the lead. Your offense was not able to take it back. And ultimately, you've got to be better tomorrow when it's Reynaldo Lopez versus Dylan Cease to figure this out. We will be back tomorrow morning with another episode of Braves Today. In the meantime, you're listening, if you're listening to this on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, thanks for hopping into the live stream. Feel free to leave a comment down below, thumbs up on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.